Namaste, welcome back to Stitha channel. In this video today, I will try to finish at least 15 questions more. Okay, so without any delay, let's start it. Question number 66. A company provides an API interface to customers so the customers can retrieve their financial information. The company expects a larger number of requests during peak usage times of the year. The company requires the API to respond consistently with low latency. To ensure customer satisfaction, the company needs to provide a compute host for the API. Which solution will meet these requirements with least operational overhead? Whenever you see hosting API on AWS, just go with API gateway, and this is not it. It doesn't have API gateway, so let's cross it out. Same thing with this, cross it out. So we have two options where we have API gateway and both use AWS Lambda, but one is talking about provisioned concurrency and another is talking about reserved concurrency. So let's look at those. What provisioned concurrency and reserved concurrency is about. Okay, so concurrency is the number of in-flight requests your function is handling at the same time. There are two types. Reserved concurrency is the maximum number of current instances you want to allocate to your function. Provisioned is the number of pre-initialized execution environments you want to allocate to your function. These execution environments are prepared to respond immediately to incoming function requests. Okay, and our question says it expects larger number of requests, so which we already know, and it want have to have low latency. Okay, so for that reason, to ensure the customer satisfaction, there is no mention of cost efficient. So remember that, because reserved concurrency and provisioned concurrency, price differs between these two. So the best option in this scenario is provisioned concurrency. Okay, so provisioned concurrency, we just saw that it is the number of pre-initialized execution environments you want to allocate to your function. These execution environments are prepared to respond immediately. So let's go with that. But remember, if they ask cost and it doesn't mention the other requirement, then we will go with reserve. Okay, so the answer would be provisioned concurrency. Let's pick that, not the reserved one. A company 67. A company is migrating an on-premises application to AWS. The company wants to use Redshift as a solution. Which use cases are suitable for Amazon Redshift? Okay, so let's look at this. Let's go through one up to down. Supporting data APIs to access data with traditional containerized event-driven applications. Well, you do have API access. They have it. They got it recently, I think a couple of years ago, if I'm not wrong. They have this data API. You can access Redshift through Redshift through API, but it's not used for querying data. You cannot query data using this API. Instead, it is more for running SQL queries and analytics. You can submit a SQL query, then you can check the status of it, and then etc. But it is not for retrieving data. So let's cross it out. Then we have support client-side and server-side encryption. Yes, it does support that. Building analytics workloads during specified hours and when the application is not active. Sure. It's a data warehousing tool, so obviously it is capable of building analytic workloads. Then caching data to reduce the pressure on the backend database. Okay, so Redshift is not typically used for caching data. Again, as I said, it is for analytics and data warehousing purposes. Scaling globally to support petabytes of data and tens of millions of requests per minute. Yes, it supports petabytes of data. Creating a secondary replica of the cluster by using AWS Management Console. It does not Redshift clusters do not create replicas in management console. They are actually standalone clusters. You could create a disaster recovery cluster from snapshot and restore to another region, but I don't think this is what is meant in this option. Okay, so let's cross that out. And we already got our 3 options anyways. 68. A company is running a microservices application on AWS, on Amazon EC2 instances. The company wants to migrate the application to an elastic Kubernetes service cluster for scalability. The company must configure the Amazon EKS control plane with endpoint private access set to true and endpoint public access set to false to maintain security compliance. Makes sense? The company must also put the data plane in private subnets. Okay, so control plane with endpoint that it wants to put data plane in private subnets. However, the company has received error notifications because the node cannot join the cluster. Which solution will allow the node to join the cluster? Okay, so obviously, if you look at it, data plane is in private, and you have private access set to true here. So obviously, the connections, if you don't set correctly, obviously it won't join, because when you set something to private, you need to configure it accordingly. Okay, so let's look at the options here. Grant the required permission in AWS to EKS node role, IAM role. Create interface VPC endpoints. I mean, you can create this, but what are you going to do? This doesn't let you have that particular node give access to that. It doesn't work that way, right? Roles will give permissions, but when you have private subnets, public subnets, roles cannot do much about it. Usually, when you have private subnet, it is somewhere around security groups or network ACLs, or most of the time when you have these private public subnets and you want to access something in the private, you use endpoints. So let's go and look at that, right? Because remember that it is a tip for you guys. Whenever you have private subnets, public subnets, and you want to give access to, most of the time it is endpoints. Okay. Before going through that, let's go through allow in outbound traffic in the security group of the nodes. Okay, so it is talking about giving it in the node, but the thing is, this node is unable to join the cluster. So if they are enabling traffic, whatever traffic to the cluster makes sense, but it doesn't make any sense for the node outbound to have that allow outbound traffic, because it's not that the traffic is not going outside the node. Instead, it is unable to join the cluster. That is the problem. So you can cross this out. Recreate nodes in public subnet. Again, they don't want to use public subnet, so it doesn't make any sense to have that. Even if they recreate it in the public subnet, what are they going to do? They cannot join the cluster because the cluster has private. So that leaves us with the only option B here. But remember, all the time, whenever you have private subnets and you want to access to a service, it is always endpoint. Okay, so using the interface VPC endpoint, you can enable the necessary communication between Amazon EKS control plane and the nodes in private subnet. This solution ensures that the control plane maintains endpoint private access, which is set to true, and endpoint public access, which is set to false for security compliance. Okay, so if the public is true and the other way around, then there should not be any problem with the access. Question number 69. A social media company wants to allow its users to upload images in an application that is hosted in the AWS cloud. The company needs a solution that automatically resizes the images so that the images can be displayed on multiple device types. Example is, when you have phones, right? Each phone display is different. So if you don't have a logic built behind the scenes, then some website, some pictures might be visible in some phones and the others it might not, because you need to resize according to the phone device type they are using. The application experiences unpredictable traffic patterns throughout the day. Okay. The company is seeking a highly available solution that maximizes scalability. What solution should we pick? Okay, so first of all, they are talking about upload images in an application. Okay, so when they are talking about upload images, it's basically they are saying like it is a static website, because they are not saying like they need to dynamically query from a database, etc. Instead, they are just saying they are just images, and then we have to resize them and then show them. So which means the data is static. Okay, so here you can cross out the C and D because of that. Then let's go look at A and B. We have two options. One, it is saying hosted in Amazon S3 that invokes etc., and it is saying create a static website hosted in CloudFront. CloudFront doesn't host websites. It is a content delivery network, which means when you host this website on S3, whatever content that is on S3, it will deliver it to edge locations and users, but it doesn't host, so you can cross this out. That will leave you with one option. Okay, so I think I already mentioned this, the keywords, right? Whenever you see static website, and then static website means, by default it is S3, and then they are talking about resizing images, then you can use AWS Lambda functions. The reason being, they said unpredictable traffic patterns, right? Which means it is always better to go with serverless, because you don't have a capacity already predefined. No matter how much traffic it receives, Lambda functions can handle it. And then the store images in S3, yeah, that will work for us. You don't use RDS database to store images, that's there, and you don't use EC2 instance, because again we are talking about unpredictable traffic, so it's always better to go with serverless. And here they are talking about ECS SQs and whatnot. Question number 70. A company uses AWS organization with resources tagged by account. The company also uses AWS backup to back up its AWS infrastructure resources. The company needs to back up all AWS resources. Which solution will meet these requirements with least operational overhead? Okay, so it just wants to back up all the resources, and it has tagged and using the AWS backup service for it. Okay, so let's go through options here, and they are talking about, if you look at this option, use inspector to identify all non-compliant. No, inspector doesn't do that. Require all AWS account owners to review their resources. Well, this does not meet the operational overhead, because identifying manually takes forever. Use AWS config to identify all resources that are not running. Add these resources to backup vault. I mean, why nowhere in the question it talks about you need to back up only resources that are not running, so you can cross this out. I don't know why it is talking about not running. Okay, so if you look at the answer A, it says use the config to identify all untagged resources in case if some are not tagged. Tag the identified resources programmatically, then use these tags in the backup plan. That's it. As simple as that. So this will allow you to leverage AWS config to identify any untagged resources within your AWS organization's account. Once identified, you can programmatically apply the necessary tags to indicate the backup requirements for each resource. By using tags in the backup plan configuration, you can ensure that only the tagged resources are included in the backup process, reducing operational overhead and ensuring all necessary resources are backed up. 71. A company is developing software that uses a PostgreSQL database schema. The company needs to configure multiple development environments and databases for the company's developers. On average, each development environment is used for half of the 8-hour workday. Which solution will meet these requirements most cost efficiently. Okay, so let's look at option A. Most of them you can see configure each with its own. Here it's talking about PostgreSQL, Aurora on-demand processor compatible, RDS, S3. Okay, first of all we can cross out D. Okay, they're talking about PostgreSQL database schema, and here it is talking about having an S3 bucket. So let's cross that out. Then let's look at option B. Configure each development environment with its own Amazon RDS for PostgreSQL single availability zone DB instance. Okay, so this is a reliable. While RDS is a reliable and cost-effective option, it may have slightly higher costs when you compare with Amazon Aurora databases. Okay, so let's cross this out because we are saying most cost-effectively, right? So you need to compare with Aurora because the other two options are Aurora. Then we need to figure out which one is better. Is it on-demand better or PostgreSQL better? Okay. So if you look at on-demand, right, obviously, when do you use on-demand? And this is obviously, it's not talking about whether it is on-demand or if it is reserved, etc. Okay. So this particular option, the on-demand PostgreSQL option, it provides the benefit of Amazon Aurora, which is a high performance and scalable database engine, and while allowing you to pay for usage on an on-demand basis. Okay, so these are typically more cost effective for individual development environments compared to the provisioned capacity, right? For example, if you pick this one, let's assume, since it is not mentioning, then it might be a provisioned one, right? Why do you want to have a provisioned one instead of an on-demand? Because you are only saying used for half of the 8-hour workday. If you provision, then it has to run for 24/7, right? So obviously the better option here is to pick this one. Think of it as like EC2 instances, right? So you have EC2 on demand and then you have EC2 reserved. When you have to run only 4 hours per a day, and it is not saying which 4 hours, right? Which one will you go? Will you go with on demand or will you go with reserved? Obviously we'll go with on demand. The reason being reserved means you need to run 24/7, which is not the use case. So going with on demand will save more money compared with the provisioned one. Okay, just compare this with the EC2s and then you will get the answer. 72. A global marketing company has applications that run in the AP Southeast 2 region and the EU West 1 region. Applications that run in a VPC in EU West 1 need to communicate securely with databases that run in VPC in East 2. Okay, they are just talking about there are 2 VPCs and we need to access resources in the other VPC, etc. And we already know in order for that to work, we need to use VPC peering. And unfortunately for us, pretty much all the options have VPC peering enabled, and except the last one, transit gateway. Okay, so if you have more than 2 VPCs, then going with the transit gateway makes sense, but here we don't need it, so let's cross it out. Then the other 3 uses VPC peering connections, and let's look at each one of them. Okay, so let's see the differences. Here it's saying connection between west and southeast, then create an inbound relay in west, security group, etc. Here it is talking about between west and east, no difference. Update the subnet route table. Here it is talking about update the subnet route table. So when you were talking about VPC, peer VPC, you need to know once you connect them, how do you access the other one, obviously, right? So the difference between A and B and C are, here you are talking about security group, here you are talking about route tables. Okay, so once you have this VPC peering, how do you do it? You connect those 2 VPCs using subnets, not security groups. So let's cross this out. Okay, so then both of these are updating the subnet route tables. Okay, so till now, till here it is same. Then you have create an inbound rule in the Southeast database security group that allows traffic from the EU West region. Create an inbound rule in the Southeast Database Security Group that references the security group ID of the applications servers in the UU West one. So the only difference between these two is here it is talking about referencing the group ID, here it is talking about server IP address. So which one is the true? Do you mention the server IP address or do you mention the okay? So to answer that, you cannot reference the security group of a peer VPC that's in a different region. Okay, so you cannot reference it from another VPC region. If it is the same VPC region, okay, fine, you can access the security group, but since it's in a different region, you cannot. Let's assume in the same region you have two VPCs, right? You can have, that's totally fine. Then you can access the security groups, but here we are talking about different regions. Then you cannot access the security groups. So this option is gone. Okay. Instead, what we will do is we will use the CIDR block of the peer VPC. So that's the reason. Okay. So C is the answer. So what did we eliminate? First of all, you update the route table, not the security group. Oh, so actually here it is not even talking about that. So you need to update the route table, which brought us to BC. And then since these are cross region, you cannot use security group. That's how we eliminated it. 73. A company operates a two-tier application for image processing. Okay. The application uses two availability zones, which is good. Each with one public subnet and one private subnet. Okay, which means there are total two public subnets and two private subnets. The application load balancer for the web tier uses the public. Makes sense because the traffic comes from outside and they should be able to access the ALB. If it is in private, then we cannot access, the user cannot access. Since it's public, makes sense. Obviously, EC2 instances, they will use the private subnets. Users report that the application is running more slowly than expected. A security audit of the web server log files shows that the application is receiving millions of illegitimate requests from a small number of IP addresses. A solutions architect needs to resolve the immediate performance problem while the company investigates a more permanent solution. Okay, so I think it is pretty much clear, right? We have ALB, we have that, everything is fine. I think there is no confusion between. But what is happening is some millions of legitimate requests are coming, and because of that, we are seeing performance issues here. Okay, let's look at the options now. I think we are clear with our question, right? Let's look at the options now. First option, it says modify the inbound security group for the web tier. Add a deny rule for the IP addresses that are consumed. First of all, in the security group, you cannot mention any deny rules. You can only mention whatever is allowed, but you cannot mention the denied rules. So that option will go away. Okay. Then let's look at another option similar to this one. It is talking about here application tier, and that is web tier. So let's cross this out as well. Okay. You are clear with us, right? With me, right? You cannot mention deny rules in the security group. You can only mention the allow. Then we have modify the ACL for the, here we are talking about the web tier, here we are talking about application tier. Okay. If you see which one is in the public subnet, the web tier, not the application. Application tier is already in the private subnet, so there is no way that millions of illegitimate requests can get through the private subnet because it is a private subnet, you know. So cross this out, then we are left with this particular option. Okay, which subnet will get these illegitimate millions of requests? Obviously the public one, because it is open to everybody. Okay, not the private one, which we can cross it out. Okay, so then let's check this option. It's talking about modify the network ACL. Makes sense. Network ACL is the firewall for the at subnet level. So they are talking about public subnet. So let's modify that. And they are talking about add an inbound deny rule for IP addresses that are consuming resources. Okay, makes sense. And you can mention the deny rules on the network as well, whereas in security groups you cannot mention deny rules. Okay, those are the two things to remember. First of all, we eliminated by the deny because security group you cannot deny, so two are out. Then B and D we eliminated D because it is a private subnet, so this is not the one that is getting affected, so you can ignore that. 74. A company has migrated multiple Microsoft Windows Server workloads to Amazon EC2 instances that run in US Westward region. The company manually backs up the workloads to create an image as needed. In the event of a natural disaster in the US West 1 region, the company wants to recover workloads quickly in the US West 2 region. The company wants no more than 24 hours of data loss on the EC2 instances. The company also wants to automate any backups of the EC2 instances. Which solutions will meet with least administrative effort? Okay, I think the question is clear. First of all, they are talking about automating it, and they are okay with 24 hours of data loss. Okay, so first things first, when you want to automate backups, by default you know which service to use. We are going to use AWS backup. Okay, so and does it look like all the options are using? Okay, so when I scan through it, I can see A and B, we need to pick one of the option, and between C, D, E we need to pick another option. Okay, so these two answers are split between these 5 options, 1 and 2, A and B first option, the C, D, E and second option. Let's go through A and B first, and let's eliminate the other option. So both are create an EC2 backend Amazon machine image lifecycle policy to create a backup based on tags. Cool. Schedule the backup to run twice daily. Copy the image on demand. Schedule the backup to run twice daily. Configure the copy to the US region. Okay. And okay, so here the difference here is copy the image on demand. Configure the copy to the US West region. Okay. So this is talking about copy the image on demand, but if you don't, then what will it do? It will try to copy it to the same region as wherever you are creating the backup. You are backing up the US West one, so it will create the copy on the US West one itself. So the best option is to, once you do all that, configure the copy to the US West 2 region, because that's where we want it to be in case of disaster. Okay, let's compare C, D and E now. Okay, let's look at this. Let's look at D and E. The reason being, these two have the same starting ones. Let's create a backup vault by using AWS backup, and here it's talking about create backup vaults by using. So why do you want to create backup vaults in both the regions? Okay, well, that's fine. Let's keep it at that. These two, let's check these two. When you compare with D and E, okay, so I think the order matters, right? First of all, you need to define this and then specify the backup plan to schedule. Here we are saying specify the backup plan to run query and then copy it. Okay, so it doesn't make any sense. So I am assuming you will run this twice, then your backup will be created, then copy on demand, which means somebody has to copy it manually. Again, this is not automated solution, so let's cross this out. Oh, sorry. Okay, we don't want it on demand, we want it to be scheduled automatically. Then if you look at this, between these two, create a backup plan for the tags, create a Lambda function to run a scheduled job. Well, we don't want this. The reason being, we want least administrative effort. When we have the scheduling part in the AWS backup, why do we want to use Lambda? You can use Lambda to do that, but again, it's an extra administrative effort. Okay, because we want to automate the backup process and etc. So answer B and D. Answers are B and D. Okay, so remember, least operational overhead, least administrative effect. Whenever you see this, try to use the features that are already in that particular tool the question is asking. Okay, in our case, backup already has this scheduling feature. You don't have to use Lambda function to do that. 75. A company has a web application for travel ticketing. The application is based on a database that runs in a single data center in North America. The company wants to expand the application to serve a global user base. The company needs to deploy the application to multiple AWS regions. Average latency must be less than 1 second on updates to the reservation database. The company wants to have separate deployments of its web platform across multiple regions. However, the company must maintain a single primary reservation database that is globally consistent. Which solution should a solutions architect recommend to meet these requirements? Okay, first of all, whenever you see global user base and if it is talking about any database and it says the latency must be less than 1 second, go with DynamoDB. Okay, because most of the relational databases doesn't have that latency of 1 second on updates to the reservation database. So let's go with DynamoDB, which will eliminate, let's see, this is Aurora serverless, RDS Aurora server. Okay, we are left with only one option luckily, which is option A. Okay, and this one has actually features for global setting. Right here they are talking about global user base. So DynamoDB has global tables feature which you can use to achieve a globally consistent reservation database with low latency and updates. Whereas if you take any of these are region bound. Okay, so this is talking about deploy Aurora read replicas in each region. Okay, you will, but again the writer will be sitting in one region, not throughout the world, because it is talking about updates, right? It has to update. Then read replica is not asynchronous, it is asynchronous, so it will take some time for the read replicas to get updated. So again latency will be affected. Okay, so whenever you see this global user base, latency and a database, go with DynamoDB. 76. A social media company is building a feature for its website. The feature will give users the ability to upload photos. The company expects significant increases in demand during large events and must ensure that the website can handle the upload traffic from users. Which solution meets these requirements with the most scalability? Most scalability, which means even if number of users increases in the near future, we should be able to handle this. Architecture should be able to handle it. Okay, so there are a couple of options. The first one it is talking about is upload files from the user's browser to the application servers, then transfer the files to Amazon S3 bucket. Okay, so here first of all, what is it saying? When you do that, what is going to happen? When number of users increases, the application server is going to be affected. Okay, so it will take more load, and as the number of users increases, the performance of the application server decreases. So it's not more scalable at all, because you are trying to put the complete load on the application server as the number of users increases. Okay, so let's cross that up. Provision a storage gateway, file gateway. Upload files directly from the user's browser to the file gateway. Well, you already know file gateway is a gateway between your on-premise and the AWS storage devices. So you can use file gateway to upload, but not from browser. You can use, however, you are accessing the file gateway, you can to the file gateway, but where are we storing this? It is not talking about that. It is saying like upload files directly to file gateway, but you cannot do that. File gateway is just a means to access behind. Is it S3? It is not saying. It is saying store it on file gateway, which you cannot do that. Then let's talk about option D, provision and EFS, then upload files directly from user's browser to the file system, which you cannot do that because EFS is a AWS cloud and you cannot upload directly from your user's browser to EFS unless the EFS is mounted on the application server. Again, it is same as A, which we don't want to do. That will leave us with option C. Okay, so what happens with this approach is the user, it will allow users to upload files directly to S3 without passing through the application servers. What will this do? It will reduce the load on the application and it will improve scalability, because tomorrow even if the users increase from 10 to million, it's fine, because we are not going through the application server. Instead, we are directly going to the S3 bucket. So it leverages the client-side capabilities to handle the file uploads and offloads the processing to S3. Okay, so remember that. So the answer is C. Generate Amazon S3 pre-signed URLs in the application. Upload files directly from user's browser to S3 bucket. Then, instead of going through application, we go away from the application server. 77. A company has Amazon EC2 instances that run nightly batch jobs to process data. The EC2 instances run in an auto-scaling group that uses on-demand billing. If a job fails on one instance, another instance will reprocess the job. The batch jobs run between 12 a.m. and 6 a.m. local time every day. Which solution will provide EC3 instances to meet requirements most cost effectively? Okay, so first and foremost, you can see, remember this, if a job fails on one instance, another instance will reprocess the job, which tells us that it is a stateless application and it can handle failures. Okay, which means whenever you see this option, what did I tell you? Go for straight spot instances. Okay, so let's see where we have spot. You don't have spot, you don't have spot, you don't have spot. There is only one option that has spot. Then that is the answer. Okay, so here we save time, because in real exam you need to save time. Some questions they will ask you like this, where you don't have to go through all the options. Instead, I don't know why I did this. Instead, you can directly eliminate the others. Okay, remember that whenever they ask you, the application can handle the failures, and if in turn it means stateless, right? Directly go and pick the spot instances. You don't even have to read anything. Okay, because spot instances are the most cheapest of all of them. 78. A company needs to connect several VPCs in the US East 1 region that span hundreds of AWS accounts. The company's networking team has its own AWS account to manage the cloud network. Most operational efficient way to connect these VPCs. I think we spoke about this in one of the VPC question today. If you have more than 2 VPCs and if you want to connect, if you want to establish connection between all of them, the answer would be transit gateway. Okay, so there is only one option where you can do that. So let's go pick that option. So VPC peering is between 2 VPCs. So if you have hundreds, then you have to establish hundreds of connections to do that, which is not operationally efficient. NAT gateway, again, we cannot do that. NAT gateway is just a way to access services through private subnet, okay, or way to access internet from a private subnet. I mean, if your subnet is private, you cannot have public internet in and out, right? But for software updates and etc., sometimes you need access to public internet from your server. So at that time you establish NAT gateway, and internet gateway will give you access to public. So that has nothing to do with this. And VPN gateways is between on-premise and our VPC, so forget about that. Okay, straightly go to that. 79. A company runs an infrastructure monitoring service. The company is building a new feature that will enable the service to monitor data in customer AWS accounts. The new feature will call AWS APIs in customer accounts to describe Amazon EC2 instances and read Amazon CloudWatch metrics. What should the company do to obtain access to customer accounts in most secure way? Okay. All right. So if we reiterate the question, they are talking about, call AWS APIs in customer accounts to describe EC2 instances, and okay. So we need access to these accounts secure way, because there are many accounts, not just one account. Okay, so how do we do that? Always whenever they ask secure way, it's giving access to EC2 instances. The first best way to do is through IAM roles, period. That's it. Okay, so that is the safest way you can give access to EC2 machines. Okay, so let's look at this. Cognito user, forget about it. Cognito user is something like Google login or Amazon login from other applications. So you need to have user accounts and whatnot. Even if you have that, they are talking about user in their account to use an IAM role with read-only EC2 permissions, encrypt and blah blah blah. So it's irrelevant. You don't need to do that, because these are all customer accounts. What are these customer accounts? They are AWS accounts, which means they are already in the system. Okay. Ensure that the customers create an IAM user in their account with read-only EC2 cloud permissions. Well, this no, because these EC2s are sitting, okay, so in customer's account to describe that metrics, right? So with read-only EC2 and CloudWatch permissions, encrypt and store customer access secret keys. This no, this is not. It is not talking about providing the access to the EC2 machines through role, so it is not the most secure way. Again, create a serverless API. That this is too much. Okay, so let's go with our IAM role itself. Okay, so anytime if you want to give access to EC2 machines, the most secure way, it is IAM role. Okay, so by having customers create an IAM role with the necessary permissions in their own accounts, the company can use IAM to establish cross-account access. Okay, the trust policy allows the company's AWS account to assume the customer's IAM role temporarily, granting access to the specified resources within the customer's account. This approach follows the principle of least privilege, as the company only requests the necessary permissions and does not require long-term access keys or user credentials from the customers like the other options are telling you. Question number 80. This will be our last question for today. And if you have not subscribed yet, please click on the subscription button. Once you subscribe, don't forget to hit the notification bell, so that will let you know whenever I post videos. You will get an mail telling you that I posted a new video. And if you haven't liked and commented, please do that. So when you do these things, it's a way of directly telling me that you are interested in these videos and you want me to create these videos very often, like maybe once a day or twice a day, etc. If I don't see any of that activity, then I will think like people are not interested in this. So when people are not interested, it doesn't make any sense for me to create these videos and post them every day, right? What is the point? So if you haven't, please do that. That will really help me understand if you are interested or not. That being said, let's look at the 88th question. A company runs a website that uses a content management system on Amazon EC2. The CMS runs on a single EC2 instance and uses an Amazon Aurora MySQL multi-AZ DB instance for the data tier. Website images are stored on EBS volume that is mounted inside the EC2 instance. Which combination of actions should the solutions architect take to improve the performance and the resilience of the website? Performance we understand. Resilience means in case even if it fails, you should be able to handle it somehow. Okay. Let's look at this. First of all, it's talking about move the website images to an Amazon S3 bucket that is mounted on every EC2 instance, which is not possible. You cannot mount an S3 bucket on an EC2 instance. Then share the website images by using an NFS share from primary EC2. Mount this share on the other. Now it doesn't make any sense as well, so let's cross that out. Then we have these three options. Option C, move the website images onto EFS file system that is mounted on every EC2 instance. This makes sense because this will improve the performance because you don't have to have the right now, as you can see, these images are stored in EBS volume that is mounted inside the EC2 instance. Okay, but if you are going to have auto scaling and going to have multiple EC2 instances, then it will always make sense to have an EFS, because you can share the files instead of mounting EBS, because in whatever files that are in this EBS won't be there in the other EBS, and it will be hard to maintain, right? So it's always recommended to have an EFS. Then we have create an AMI. Looks like between D and D, 1 is the right answer. Let's look at D. Create an AMI from the existing EC2 instance. Okay, fine. Use the AMI to provision new instances behind an application load balancer as part of an auto-scaling school. Makes sense. Configure the auto-scaling group to maintain a minimum of 2 instances. Makes sense, because you know, it will, when you have 2 instances, no matter what, you will have that high availability. Then configure an accelerator in AWS Global Accelerator for the website, and here it is talking about configure an Amazon CloudFront distribution for the website. Okay, so which one would you pick? That one or this one? Auto scaling will take care of the resilience of the website, whereas the CloudFront distribution for the website takes care of the improvement of the performance for it. Okay, so by combining the use of Amazon EFS for the shared file storage and Amazon CloudFront for content delivery, you can achieve improved performance as well as the resilience for the website. We already know what the CloudFront distribution is for. We are done with the questions for today. If you already subscribed to this channel, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. And I think I will see you in the next one, and have a nice day.